He forced me to sing at his wedding. He thought it would make everyone laugh. I stood there, holding back my tears, microphone in hand. But just before I could sing, the doors opened, and there he was, my husband, the man who loved me when my ex said no one ever would, walking in with our triplet daughters, each holding a pink microphone, singing in harmony. The song he forced me to sing became our victory anthem. That day, I didn't just sing, I made karma dance. But before I tell you what happened next, I need you to do something for me. If you're watching this video right now, I need you to subscribe to Pre-Sophie Stories. Turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. And please, please like this video. Your support means everything to me and to our channel. And before we continue, I want to know, where are you watching from? Comment your country right now. I want to see the different places you're from. Don't scroll away yet. Comment your country and then we'll continue with my story. Are you ready? Let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Vanessa Townsend, and my story is one that I've kept locked away inside my heart for so long. But today, I'm sharing it with you because I believe that someone out there needs to hear it. Someone out there is going through what I went through, and I want them to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. There is hope. There is redemption. And sometimes life rewards you in ways you never could have imagined. I grew up in Houston, Texas. It's where I learned what love was supposed to look like, and it's also where I learned what betrayal felt like. My childhood was relatively normal. My parents were loving. They taught me to work hard, to dream big, and to never settle for less than I deserved. But as I got older, I realized that the world didn't always agree with my parents' lessons. The world had its own way of teaching me lessons, and some of them were painful. My mother was a school teacher, and my father worked as a mechanic. They had been married for over 30 years when I was growing up. I watched them work together, support each other, lift each other up on the days when the weight of life felt too heavy to carry alone. My mother would come home exhausted from dealing with difficult students and their problems, and my father would have dinner waiting for her. My father would have a rough day at the shop, something breaking down that he couldn't fix quickly enough, and my mother would sit with him and listen without judgment. That's what I thought love looked like. That's what I believed I deserved to have one day. I had two older sisters, Rochelle and Yvette. They were both married by the time I was in my 20s, and they both had children already. Rochelle had a son and a daughter, and Yvette had twins. When I was in my teenage years, I watched them become mothers, and I was filled with this sense of longing. I wanted to be a mother too. I wanted to have that experience of carrying a child inside me, of bringing new life into the world, of having someone call me mom. It was a dream that felt as natural to me as breathing. But I wasn't in any rush, not back then. I was young. I was in college. I had my whole life ahead of me. I had time. Or so I thought. I went to college at the University of Houston. I studied marketing because I liked the idea of connecting with people, of understanding what made them tick, of persuading them to see things from a certain perspective. I was good at it. I had internships throughout my college years, and I graduated with honors. By the time I was 24 years old, I had been working at Coleman & Associates for about a year. I had an apartment of my own, not a fancy place, but it was mine. I paid the rent, I paid the utilities, I kept it clean and warm. I had a life that felt solid, that felt like I was moving forward. I had coworkers who respected me, managers who promoted my ideas, and a salary that allowed me to save money and invest in my future. I remember those days so clearly. I would wake up in the morning, go to my job, work on marketing campaigns, and come home feeling satisfied. I would cook myself dinner, watch television, read books, pursue hobbies. I was happy. I was content. I had no idea that my life was about to change completely. Then I met Keith Bryant at a friend's party in the summer of 2009. I remember exactly what he was wearing that night. He had on a blue button-down shirt, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, and dark jeans. His hair was perfectly lined up, freshly cut from the barber. He was talking to my friend Marcus about something. I don't remember what, but he had this energy about him, this confidence that made him impossible to ignore. When he looked across the room and saw me, he smiled, and that smile changed everything. I wasn't the kind of girl who had a lot of experience with dating. I had had a couple of boyfriends in college, nothing serious, nothing that lasted. I was focused on my studies, on my career, on building my life. But something about Keith's smile made me want to take a chance. My friend Marcus waved me over. He said, "Vanessa, come here. I want you to meet Keith. He's my cousin, visiting from out of state." Keith turned to look at me, and I felt my stomach do a flip. He was even more attractive up close. He had these warm brown eyes, and when he extended his hand to shake mine, I felt a spark of electricity run through me. "Keith Bryant," he said. "Nice to meet you, Vanessa." "You too," I said, trying to sound casual, trying not to let him see how nervous I was. We started talking that night, and we didn't stop talking until the party ended. He told me about his life back home. He was from a small town outside of Dallas, and he had recently moved back there after college to be close to his family. He told me about his job in sales, how he was trying to build his career, how he had big dreams of eventually starting his own business. He asked me about my job, my family, my dreams. He listened to me talk about my desire to one day run my own marketing firm, and he looked at me like what I was saying actually mattered. "That's amazing," he said. "You've got that spark in you, that drive. I can tell you're going to do big things." Nobody had ever looked at me like that before. Nobody had ever made me feel so seen, so understood, so valued. And in that moment, I felt myself falling for him. It happened so quickly, so unexpectedly, that it took my breath away. By the end of the night, he had asked for my number, and I'd given it to him. I didn't expect to hear from him. I thought maybe he was just being nice, just being charming for the sake of it. But 3 days later, my phone rang. I was at work when I saw his number on my screen. My heart jumped into my throat. "Hi, Vanessa, it's Keith from the party, Marcus's cousin. I was wondering if you'd like to go out sometime, maybe get some dinner." My heart jumped into my throat. "Yeah, I'd like that," I said, trying to keep the excitement out of my voice. We arranged to meet at an Italian restaurant in downtown Houston the following Friday. I spent the entire week thinking about that date. I changed my outfit about 15 times the day of. I was so nervous, so excited, so unsure of what was going to happen. I called my sister Rochelle 3 times that day, asking her if she thought he really liked me or if I was just imagining things. "You're overthinking this," she said. "Just go on the date and see what happens. You deserve to be happy." When I saw Keith walking into the restaurant, looking like he had just stepped out of a magazine, all my nervousness seemed to melt away. He was genuinely happy to see me. He smiled when he saw me, and he pulled out my chair for me. Throughout dinner, he was attentive, charming, and he kept making me laugh. We talked for hours about everything, our families, our dreams, our past relationships, our favorite books and movies. When the waiter finally came to clear our plates, I was shocked to realize that 3 hours had passed. "I don't want this night to end," Keith said as we were leaving the restaurant. "Would you want to go for a walk? There's a park nearby." We walked through the park for another hour, talking, laughing, and when he reached over and held my hand, I felt like I was floating. When he walked me back to my car, he leaned in and kissed me. It was a soft kiss, a gentle kiss, but it felt like everything I had been waiting for. As I drove home that night, I couldn't stop smiling. I couldn't stop thinking about his kiss, his laugh, the way he looked at me like I was the most important person in the world. "Can I see you again?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Definitely." We started dating after that. We went out to dates every weekend. He would drive over from his town to see me, and sometimes I would drive to see him. We discovered that we had so much in common. We liked the same music, the same movies, the same kind of food. We could talk for hours and never run out of things to say. He made me feel special, He made me feel loved. During those first few months of dating, Keith was incredibly attentive. He would remember little things I had said, that I loved lilies, that I preferred coffee with just a hint of cream, that I had always wanted to visit the Grand Canyon. He would surprise me with these little gifts and gestures that showed me he was really paying attention. He would bring me flowers just because. He would call me during his lunch break just to hear my voice. He made me feel like I was the center of his universe. "I'm falling in love with you," he told me one evening as we sat on the balcony of my apartment, looking out at the Houston skyline. "I know it's fast, and I know I'm supposed to play it cool, but I can't help myself. You're incredible, Vanessa. I don't want to waste any time pretending like I don't feel this way about you." I felt tears of joy streaming down my face. "I'm falling in love with you too," I said. "I was so scared to admit it, but it's true. I love you, Keith." He pulled me close and kissed me. And in that moment, I felt like my life was perfect. I felt like I had found the person I was supposed to spend my life with. I felt like everything was going to work out the way I wanted it to. About 6 months into our relationship, Keith asked me to move in with him. We were at a restaurant, and he had planned this whole romantic evening. After dinner, he took my hand and looked into my eyes. "Vanessa, I love you. And I know this might be fast, but I don't care about fast anymore. I just know that I want to spend every day with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to build a life with you. Would you move in with me? Will you take that step with me?" I was hesitant at first. Moving in with him would mean leaving my job, leaving Houston, leaving my family and my friends. But Keith convinced me that it was the right move. He said he would help me find a new job. He said that starting our life together was more important than any career advancement. He painted a picture of our future together that was so beautiful, so compelling that I couldn't say no. "Yes," I said, and I saw his face light up with joy. "Really?" he asked. "Really," I confirmed. "I'll move in with you." Over the next few weeks, I told my parents, my sisters, and my boss that I was moving. My parents were supportive, though I could see the worry in their eyes. My sisters threw me a going-away party. My boss offered to write me a recommendation letter for jobs in Keith's town. Everyone was excited for me, even though I could sense some concern underneath the excitement. My mother pulled me aside before I left. "Baby, are you sure about this? I'm not questioning Keith. He seems like a good man, but I just want to make sure you're doing this for the right reasons. Are you running toward something, or are you running away from something?" "I'm running toward him. I'm running toward the life we're going to build together. I'm sure, Mom. I'm really sure." So I did it. I quit my job at Coleman & Associates. I packed up my apartment. I moved in with Keith to his small hometown outside of Dallas. The first few months of living together were magical. We had our own little routines. We would wake up together, and I would make us breakfast while he got ready for work. During the day, while he was at his sales job and I was looking for work, I would set up our apartment, make it feel like a home. I hung pictures on the walls, organized the kitchen the way I liked it, bought nice sheets and soft towels. I would cook dinner for us, and we would eat together and talk about our days. We would watch movies, we would make love, we would dream about our future. Everything felt perfect. I did find a new job at a smaller marketing firm for less pay than I had been making at Coleman. It was a significant cut in salary, almost 25% less than what I had been making at Coleman & Associates. Keith said it would be okay. He said that we were building something together, and sometimes sacrifice was necessary. I believed him. I trusted him. "We'll make it work," he said. "And once you get established at this new job, you can potentially move to a bigger company or start your own firm. This is just a stepping stone." So I accepted the position and threw myself into my work, even though the pay was lower. I was still making decent money, and combined with Keith's sales job, we had a comfortable life. We were able to pay our bills, enjoy ourselves, and start saving for the future. One of the things I shared with Keith early on was my love of singing. I had sung in the choir in high school. I had sung in my church growing up. Singing was something that brought me joy, something that made me feel alive. When I was singing, I felt like I could express emotions that I didn't have words for. Singing was my language of the soul. I remember telling Keith about this on one of our early nights together. We were lying in bed and I was talking about how much I loved to sing, how I'd always thought about maybe pursuing it more seriously, and how in another life I might have gone to college for music instead of marketing. "You should definitely do that," he said. "I'd love to hear you sing. I bet you have a beautiful voice." My heart soared when he said that. It was the first time anyone had encouraged my singing in a long time. It was the first time someone I loved had told me that my voice was something worth sharing. So one morning, when he had gone to work and I was alone in the apartment, I decided to sing for him. It was foolish, maybe, but I wanted to share this part of myself with him. I wanted him to know who I was, really was, beyond just the woman he was dating. I wanted him to know my dreams, my passions, the things that made my heart sing. I waited until that evening when he came home from work. I was nervous. My voice had always been soft, delicate, not the kind of voice that commanded attention. But I stood in our living room and I sang for him. I sang an old Aretha Franklin song that had always moved me. I poured my heart into it. I closed my eyes and let the music flow through me. When I finished, I opened my eyes and looked at Keith. I was expecting to see admiration, maybe awe. I was expecting him to wrap his arms around me and tell me that I had been right about my voice, that it was beautiful. Instead, I saw something that made my stomach drop. He was smiling, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was a smirk. There was something mocking about it. There was something cruel. That was something, he said. My heart sank. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice small. "I mean, it was nice, but..." He paused, and I could see him choosing his words carefully, as if he was trying to soften the blow of what he was about to say. "Your voice is kind of tiny, isn't it? It's cute, I guess, but I don't know. It's like you're whispering when you're supposed to be singing. It's almost like you're afraid to let people hear you. That's the vibe I get." I felt my face flush. I felt embarrassed. I felt hurt. The joy I had felt just moments before evaporated, replaced by shame and doubt. "Oh," I said quietly, "I didn't know you felt that way." "I'm not trying to hurt your feelings," he said, coming over to me and wrapping his arms around me from behind. His touch, which usually made me feel safe and loved, now felt suffocating. "I just think you should maybe focus on other things, you know? Other things where you have more talent. That's all I'm saying. I love you and I want to see you succeed. But singing might not be the thing for you." I told myself that he was right. I told myself that he was being honest with me, and honesty was important in a relationship. I told myself that he was just being practical, that he was looking out for me, that he was trying to save me from the embarrassment of pursuing something I wasn't good at. If my voice wasn't good enough, why would I want to waste my time pursuing it? If even the man I loved didn't believe in my voice, how could I believe in myself? So I stopped singing. Or at least I stopped singing in front of him. When he was at work, sometimes I would sing while I did the housework. I would sing while I cleaned the kitchen, while I did the laundry, while I took a shower. It was a way to stay connected to that part of myself that I was slowly starting to let go of. But I kept my voice low, quiet, in case he came home early and caught me. I was terrified of his judgment, terrified of being mocked, terrified of hearing that disappointing tone in his voice again. One afternoon, about a year into living with Keith, I was vacuuming the living room while listening to music through my earbuds. I was singing along softly, lost in the music, not paying attention to anything else. I was so absorbed in what I was doing that I didn't hear the front door open. I didn't hear Keith come home early from work. It wasn't until I felt him pull one of my earbuds out that I realized he was there. I jumped, startled, and turned off the vacuum. My heart was pounding and I was already bracing myself for what was going to come next. "What are you doing?" he asked, but his tone made it clear that he already knew the answer and that he wasn't happy about it. I was just singing a little while I did the vacuuming, I said quietly. He laughed, that same mocking laugh I had heard before. It was a laugh that made me want to disappear, that made me want to crawl under the carpet and hide. Baby, didn't we talk about this? Your voice isn't... why do you keep trying? It's like you're setting yourself up to fail. It's like you enjoy torturing yourself. Why would you keep doing something that you're not good at? Why would you keep pursuing something that will only lead to disappointment? I felt my tears prickling at the corners of my eyes, but I held them back. I didn't want to cry in front of him. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of knowing how much his words had hurt me. I was just having fun, I said quietly. I didn't think it was a big deal. Fun? You call that fun? That's not fun. That's just sad, Vanessa. It's sad because you have a voice that's not good enough to sing, and yet you keep trying anyway. I'm saying this because I love you, okay? I don't want to see you embarrass yourself. I want to see you succeed. And this singing thing isn't going to lead to success. So why not just let it go and focus on things where you actually have talent? Focus on your marketing job. Focus on building a career where you can actually make a difference. I nodded. I didn't argue. I couldn't argue. I was so beaten down by his words that I had lost my ability to defend myself or my dreams. I put my earbuds away and went back to vacuuming, without the music, without the singing. I did this with tears streaming silently down my face, tears that Keith pretended not to notice. I made a decision in that moment. I decided that I was going to let that part of myself die. I decided that if my voice bothered him so much, if he didn't believe in me, if the person I loved most in the world thought I was ridiculous for singing, then maybe it wasn't worth pursuing. Maybe my voice really wasn't good enough. Maybe I was just fooling myself. Looking back now, I can see how much damage that moment did. I can see how it was a turning point, a place where I started to become smaller, quieter, less myself. But at the time, I was just trying to keep peace. I was just trying to be the woman that Keith wanted me to be. I was trying to avoid his judgment and his mockery. I was trying to hold on to the man that I loved. About 2 years into our relationship, Keith started talking about marriage. We were sitting on our apartment balcony, looking out at the view, and he turned to me and said, "I want to marry you, Vanessa. You know that, right? I want you to be my wife. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." My heart soared when he said that. This was what I had been waiting for, what I had been dreaming about. "Really?" I asked, hardly daring to believe it. "Really," he said, "but I want to do this the right way. I want to have a solid foundation before we get married. I don't want to jump into marriage and then struggle financially. I want us to be financially stable so that when we do get married, we're not stressing about money. We can focus on our relationship, on our future, on building a life together. Does that make sense?" It did make sense. I wasn't the kind of woman that wanted to jump into marriage without thinking it through. I was practical. I was mature. I believed in planning for the future. I believed that financial stability was important. So I agreed with him. "Of course it makes sense. I want to build a strong foundation with you too. I'm going to need you to help me build that financial foundation," he said. "I want us to start saving aggressively. I want us to cut back on unnecessary expenses, and I want you to contribute as much as possible to our savings account. Can you do that for me? Can you do that for us?" Of course I can. Of course I can do that. I want to do that. So I started saving. I started being very careful about my spending. I stopped buying clothes except for what I absolutely needed. I stopped going out with friends for entertainment. I stopped treating myself to little luxuries like coffee at the nice cafe near my work or the occasional massage when my shoulders got tense. I stopped buying books, even though I loved reading. I stopped getting my hair done professionally and started doing it myself to save money. every single extra dollar I made went into our joint savings account. I was living on the bare minimum, cutting back on everything that wasn't essential. I would pack my lunch every day instead of going out to eat with coworkers. I would walk to work sometimes instead of driving to save on gas. I would eat the cheapest food I could find that was still healthy. I was doing everything I could to contribute as much as possible to our financial foundation. Keith was making decent money in his sales job, but his contribution to our savings account was much smaller than mine. He said it was because he was still building his career, still trying to establish himself in a competitive field. He said that sales was unpredictable, that some months he made great money and other months he made much less. He said that I had been working longer in my field, that I had more job stability, that I had more to contribute. He said that he appreciated my sacrifice, that he was grateful for what I was doing, that he would make it up to me one day. I told myself that it was okay. I told myself that we were building something together, that when we got married and had children, all of this sacrifice would be worth it. I told myself that love meant being willing to give up things for the person you loved. I told myself that Keith was worth it. I didn't realize at the time that I was making a serious mistake. I didn't realize that I was setting myself up for disappointment and heartbreak. I didn't realize that the financial disparity between us, the fact that I was contributing so much more than he was going to become a symbol of the larger imbalance in our relationship. I didn't realize that I was slowly losing myself in the process of trying to build a future with him. By the time I was 27 years old, I started to feel a shift in my priorities. I had been focused on my career for so long, on building my financial foundation with Keith, on sacrificing for our future. But now I started thinking about something else. I started thinking about motherhood. I was the youngest of 3 sisters, and I watched my older sisters have children while I was still waiting for my life to really begin. I watched them experience the joy of carrying a baby inside them, of bringing new life into the world. I watched them become mothers, and I felt this ache inside me, this need to experience that too. When I visited my sister Rochelle, I would watch her with her children, and I would feel this overwhelming sense of longing. I wanted to know what it felt like to have a child call me mom. I wanted to experience the bond between a mother and her child. I wanted to know that I had created life, that I had brought someone into the world. I brought it up with Keith one evening. We were lying in bed, and I rolled over and looked at him. "Don't you want to have kids?" I asked him. "I mean, don't you think it would be nice if we started a family? I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and I really want to be a mother. I want us to have children together." "Yeah, I do," he said. "I definitely want to have kids someday, but not right now. We need to be more financially stable first. We need to make sure that when we do have kids, we can give them everything they need. That takes money, Vanessa. A lot of money. We need to have savings. We need to have a house. We need to have a solid financial foundation. So let's wait a little longer. Let's get to a place where we're really solid financially, and then we can start thinking about kids." I understood that. I really did. I knew that having children was expensive. I knew that you needed to be prepared. I knew that it was irresponsible to have children if you weren't financially ready. So I agreed to wait. But even as I agreed, I could feel time slipping away. I could feel the years passing. I was 27 now, and I didn't have any children. I started to do the math in my head. If we waited another 3 or 4 years before starting to have kids, I would be in my early 30s. And I knew that biologically, the older you got, the harder it became to have children. I didn't want to wait too long. I didn't want to regret it. I didn't want to wake up one day and realize that I had missed my window. But I didn't voice these concerns to Keith. I didn't want to seem desperate. I didn't want to pressure him. I wanted him to come to the decision on his own, to realize that he was ready to be a father. I just kept saving, kept working hard, kept telling myself that soon everything would work out the way I wanted it to. Over the next year, I became more and more consumed by the idea of having children. It wasn't just a passing thought anymore. It was something I thought about every single day. When I saw mothers with their babies, I would feel this pang in my chest, this longing that I could barely contain. When my friends talked about their children, I would listen intently, soaking up every detail, imagining what it would be like to experience that myself. I was working long hours at my marketing job, trying to advance my career, but more than that, I was trying to make more money so that Keith and I could reach our financial goals faster. I would come home exhausted, but I would still cook dinner, still do the housework, still try to be the perfect girlfriend and future wife that Keith wanted me to be. And all the while, he would promise me that soon we would have children. Soon, he would say, we'll be ready. Just give it a little more time. A little more time to save, a little more time to get our ducks in a row, a little more time to build the perfect foundation. By the time I was 30 years old, I had been with him for 5 years. I should have been happy. I should have been celebrating the milestone. But instead, I felt a sense of dread settling over me. The 2 years he had asked for had passed, and I was now ready to have children. But was he? I called Keith one evening when he was at work. I was nervous as I dialed his number, and my stomach was churning with anxiety. Can we talk tonight? There's something I want to discuss. He seemed hesitant, but he agreed. Yeah, okay, tonight after dinner. But I have to warn you, I'm going to be a little tired when I get home. I've had a long day at work. But yeah, we can talk. That evening, after we ate the meal that I had prepared for us, a nice dinner that I had spent hours cooking, I sat down on the couch and asked him to sit beside me. My hands were shaking and I could barely look him in the eye. I want to talk about our future, I said. You promised me that after 2 years, we would start to try to have a baby. That was 2 years ago. I've been with you for 5 years now. I've given you everything, Keith. I've sacrificed my career, my savings, my dreams. I've put my life on hold waiting for you. And I need to know if you're still on the same page as me. Are we going to have children? I watched his face, and I could see the internal struggle happening inside him. I could see him wrestling with how to answer my question. I could see him weighing his options, trying to figure out the best way to say what he was about to say. I don't think I'm ready, he finally said. The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. I felt dizzy and disoriented. What do you mean you're not ready? You said you wanted children. You said we were building a future together. You promised me. I know what I said, he replied, and his voice sounded tired, almost sad. And I meant it at the time. But Vanessa, I need to be honest with you. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I don't think I want to be a father. I don't think parenthood is for me. I don't think I have what it takes to be a good father, and I don't want to bring a child into the world if I'm not completely sure about it. I felt tears streaming down my face. I felt betrayed. I felt like my entire life had been a waste. So what are you saying? I asked, though I was afraid I already knew the answer. Are you saying that you don't want to have children with me? Are you saying that you lied to me? I'm not saying I lied. I'm saying that I changed my mind. People change their minds about things, Vanessa. It's not a crime. I was honest with you based on what I knew at the time. But I've had more time to think about it, and I've come to realize that fatherhood isn't for me. So what are we doing here? I asked, my voice rising. What are we building together? What is the point of all of this? The saving, the sacrificing, the putting my life on hold if you don't want to have children with me? That was the plan, Keith. That was what we were working toward. If that's not going to happen, then what is this relationship about? He was quiet for a long moment, and in that silence, I felt my heart beginning to break. I think we want different things, he finally said. I think we've grown apart. I think we might not be right for each other anymore. Those words hung in the air between us. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After 5 years, after all the sacrifice, after giving him my youth and my money and my dreams, he was telling me that we weren't right for each other anymore. Are you breaking up with me? I asked, my voice breaking. He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me with an expression that I had never seen before, an expression that looked almost like regret mixed with relief, as if he had been wanting to say this for a long time, but didn't know how to do it without hurting me. I think we need to face the truth, he finally said. I think we've grown apart. I think we want different things, and I think you deserve to be with someone who is sure about you, someone who wants the same future that you want. I'm not that person. I'm sorry, Vanessa. I'm really sorry. But I didn't want someone else. I wanted him. I wanted the future we had promised each other. I wanted to be the mother of his children. I wanted the life I had been imagining for the past 5 years. Is there someone else? I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Is there someone else, Keith? Is that what this is about? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "There's someone I've been talking to from work. Her name is Sabrina. It's not physical or anything, but I have feelings for her, and I don't think I can be with you anymore knowing that." I felt like my heart was shattering into a million pieces. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt like the world was spinning out of control. He had been cheating on me. Well, maybe not physically cheating, but emotionally, he had been moving on. He had been slowly disconnecting from me while I was still completely invested in our future together. He had been developing feelings for someone else while I was home, cooking dinner, cleaning house, sacrificing everything for him. How long? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. How long have you had feelings for her? He looked uncomfortable. I don't know. A few months? Maybe. I don't really know when it started. A few months. A few months he had been harboring these feelings for someone else, and all that time, I was at home, saving money, dreaming about having children with him, planning our future together. A few months of lies. A few months of betrayal. So what happens now? What are we supposed to do? I think we should get divorced, he said simply. I think it's the best thing for both of us. I think we'll both be happier if we go our separate ways. I wanted to argue with him. I wanted to beg him to stay, to work on our relationship, to go to counseling with me. I wanted to convince him that we could fix this, that we could make it work. But I could see in his eyes that his mind was already made up. He had already moved on emotionally. He had already started his life without me in his head. So I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just sat there on the couch, feeling completely and utterly destroyed. The divorce process was quick. Keith didn't fight me on anything. He seemed almost eager to move on. Within a few months, I found myself back at square one, alone, 31 years old, without the husband I had believed in, without the children I had dreamed of, without the future I had sacrificed everything to build. I felt hollow. I felt broken. I felt like my life was over before it had even really begun. I felt like I had wasted the best years of my life on a man who didn't appreciate me, a man who had used me, a man who had made promises he never intended to keep. I was 33 years old now, 3 years after the divorce had been finalized. I had worked hard to rebuild my life, but the pain was still there, buried deep inside me. I had left the small town where Keith lived and moved back to Houston, back to where I had started. I had found a new job, a new apartment, a new routine, but everything felt empty. Everything felt like a shadow of what I had wanted my life to be. I had friends who tried to support me. I had family who tried to lift me up, but I couldn't seem to move past the pain. I couldn't seem to let go of the anger and the resentment. I couldn't seem to forgive myself for making such a terrible mistake. I had given Keith the best years of my life, and he had thrown them away. I had sacrificed my dreams, my career, my future, and he had used that sacrifice as an excuse to leave me. I had trusted him completely, and he had broken that trust in the most painful way possible. Every time I saw a mother with her child, I felt that familiar pang of longing and regret. Every time I heard about a friend getting pregnant, I felt a mixture of joy for them and deep sadness for myself. Every time someone asked me when I was going to have children, I felt like I was being stabbed in the heart. I was 33 years old, and I felt like my biological clock had almost run out. I felt like I had missed my chance to be a mother. I felt like I had ruined my life by trusting the wrong person. And then, one day, I made a decision. I decided that I couldn't stay in Houston anymore. I decided that I needed to leave, to go somewhere new, to start completely over. I decided that I was going to relocate to another country, to disappear from the life I had known and create something entirely new. I didn't know what was waiting for me on the other side of that decision. I didn't know that I was about to step into the most extraordinary chapter of my life. I didn't know that my breaking point was actually my breakthrough point. I didn't know that the pain I had endured was going to lead me to a joy I couldn't even imagine. But I knew that I had to go. I knew that I couldn't stay in Houston anymore, couldn't be reminded every day of what I had lost, couldn't live in the shadow of Keith's betrayal. I knew that if I stayed in Houston, I would slowly fade away. I knew that I needed to save myself. So I made the arrangements. I quit my job. I packed up my apartment. I bought a one-way ticket to a new country, to a new life, to a new version of myself. As I sat on the airplane, watching Houston disappear below me, I felt something shift inside me. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was there. It was a spark of hope. It was the first glimmer of the realization that my story wasn't over. My story was just beginning. And what I didn't know then was that the best was yet to come. When the airplane touched down in the small country of St. Lucia, I felt like I was stepping into a completely different world. Everything was different here. The way people spoke, the way they moved, the way they lived their lives. The air smelled different. The sky looked different. Even the light filtering through the clouds seemed to carry a different quality, warmer somehow, more welcoming than anything I had ever experienced in Houston. I had chosen St. Lucia somewhat randomly, though looking back now, I wonder if it was random at all. I had been looking at countries that didn't require a lot of paperwork to enter, that had affordable cost of living, that had a thriving tourism industry where I might be able to find work. St. Lucia checked all those boxes. It was a Caribbean island nation, warm and beautiful, with lush green mountains that rose up dramatically from the sea and stunning beaches that seemed to go on forever. It felt like the kind of place where someone could disappear and start over. It felt like the kind of place where someone could be reborn. I had saved enough money to live for about 6 months without working. I had about $15,000 in my savings account, which might not have been much, but it was enough to rent a small apartment, buy food, and survive while I figured out my next move. It was money that I had struggled and sacrificed to save, money that I had initially been trying to save with Keith for our future together. But now, it was going to be the foundation for my new life, a life that was entirely my own. I found a tiny apartment in the capital city of Castries. It was on the second floor of an old colonial building that had been painted a pale yellow color with high ceilings and wooden shutters that opened onto a view of the harbor. I could see the ocean from my bedroom window. I could hear the sound of the waves and the seagulls and the distant sounds of the city. The rent was incredibly cheap compared to what I had been paying in Houston, only $300 a month, which felt like a miracle. The apartment was small and simple, but it felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a place where I could finally breathe. It felt like a place where I could finally heal. In those first few weeks, I didn't do much of anything. I walked around the city, exploring the streets, learning my way around. I would spend hours just walking, without any particular destination in mind, just letting my feet carry me wherever they wanted to go. I went to the market and bought fresh fruits and vegetables that I had never seen before. I tried new foods, tasted new flavors, expanded my palate in ways I had never imagined possible. I sat on the beach and watched the ocean waves roll in, watched the sun set over the water, watched the stars come out at night. I tried to process everything that had happened to me, tried to grieve the loss of the life I had imagined, tried to figure out who I was now that everything I believed in had turned out to be a lie. I didn't contact anyone back in Houston. I didn't call my family. I didn't reach out to my friends. I simply disappeared. I was like a ghost, existing but not really living. I was going through the motions, but I wasn't really engaged with my own life. I would wake up in the morning and go for a walk. I would eat breakfast. I would sit on the beach. I would eat lunch. I would go back to my apartment. I would eat dinner. I would read a book. I would go to sleep. And then I would do it all again the next day. It was a hollow existence, but it was what I needed at that time. After about a month of living in St. Lucia, I realized I needed to find work. My savings weren't going to last forever, and I needed to have a sense of purpose, something to do with my days that would make me feel like I was building something instead of just existing in a state of constant despair. I needed to feel like I had a reason to get out of bed in the morning besides the fact that another day had begun. I thought about going back into marketing. That had been my career before, and I was good at it. I had skills, I had experience, I had a track record of success. But when I thought about sitting in an office, dealing with corporate dynamics, trying to sell products and services, it all felt so hollow and meaningless. It all felt like the life I had been living before, the life that had led me into a trap with Keith. It all felt like a trap that was just waiting to capture me again. I didn't want to go back to that. I wanted something different. I wanted something that felt authentic, something that felt real. I wanted something that would nourish my soul instead of just paying my bills. I started exploring the culinary world of St. Lucia with a passion I hadn't felt in years. I went to the market every day and talked to vendors. I learned about local ingredients. I learned which fruits and vegetables were in season. I learned how to select the best quality produce. I learned about spices and herbs and how they work together. I started experimenting with recipes. I took cooking classes from local chefs who were generous with their knowledge and their time. I spent hours in my tiny apartment kitchen cooking and testing recipes and seeing what worked and what didn't. My apartment began to smell constantly of food, of garlic and onions and coconut milk and fresh herbs. It was a smell that felt like home in a way I had never experienced before. After about 3 months of living in St. Lucia, I had developed a small menu of dishes that I was confident about. I had recipes for soups, stews, breads, pastries, and desserts. I had learned how to blend St. Lucian flavors with international cuisine in a way that felt authentic and original. I had created something unique and special. I had spent weeks perfecting each recipe, making it over and over until I got it exactly right. I had tested everything on Deborah, who worked at a nearby hotel, and became my taste tester and my cheerleader. She told me that my food was incredible, that people would pay good money for what I was creating. She encouraged me to start my business. She believed in me in a way that no one had believed in me in a long time. I rented a small kitchen space from a local restaurant owner named Bernard, who wasn't using it during the afternoons. The owner had closed down his restaurant for a few hours in the middle of the day, and he was willing to rent me the kitchen space for a reasonable hourly rate. I started cooking from that space a few times a week, making food to sell at the market and to take to tourists at nearby hotels. I called my little business Vanessa's Kitchen, even though I was terrified that using my real name would somehow connect me to my past, would somehow make it possible for Keith or my family or anyone from my old life to find me. But I was starting to realize that I needed a fresh start in every way. I needed a new name, a new identity, a new version of myself. Vanessa Twanzin felt like a ghost, like a woman who had made terrible choices and had paid the price for those choices. Vanessa Twanzin felt like a failure. Vanessa Twanzin felt like someone who had wasted her life on a man who didn't appreciate her. Vanessa Twanzin felt dead. I needed to become someone different, someone alive. So I created a new identity. I started calling myself by a different name, Tamika. Tamika became my new persona. She was younger in spirit, freer, more confident. She was someone who had never been married, who had never made terrible mistakes, who had no baggage. She was someone who had always known what she wanted and had gone out and gotten it. She was someone who was starting fresh, not starting over. She was someone who was starting afresh, not starting over. I changed the name of my business from Vanessa's Kitchen to Tamika's Table. It was a subtle change, but it felt significant. Tamika's Table sounded more sophisticated, more established. It sounded like a business that was going to last, that was going to grow. I created a new email address under the name Tamika Richardson. I had taken the surname Richardson from the list of approved names because it sounded nice and professional. I created a new phone number. I created a new everything. To everyone I met in St. Lucia, I was Tamika. I was a woman from America who had moved to the island to start a business and enjoy the simple life. That was all they needed to know about me. That was the only story I was willing to tell. For the first few months, I completely avoided social media. I didn't have Facebook, I didn't have Instagram, I didn't have Twitter, I didn't have any presence online. I wanted to disappear completely. I wanted to leave no trace of my old life, no connection to the woman I had been before. I wanted to make sure that no one from my past could find me, could track me down, could pull me back into a life I had worked so hard to escape. I didn't go to events. I didn't attend parties or gatherings. I didn't put myself in situations where I would have to talk about my past or explain where I was from or what my story was. I just worked. I cooked and I sold food and I slowly built my business. I was like a monk in a monastery, focused entirely on my work, on building something meaningful and real. But after about a year of living in St. Lucia, I realized that having some kind of online presence could help my business. Tourists and locals alike were using social media to find restaurants and food businesses. If I wanted to grow my business, if I wanted to reach more people, if I wanted to make my food business something that could actually sustain me financially, I needed to be findable online. I needed to have a social media presence. So I created a new social media presence, but I did it very carefully. I created a Facebook page and an Instagram account under the name Tamika's Table. I posted pictures of my food, beautiful pictures that I learned to take with better and better lighting as time went on. I posted pictures of fresh ingredients at the market. I posted pictures of the sunset from my favorite beach. I posted pictures of my kitchen. But I never posted pictures of myself. I never showed my face. I carefully curated my online presence so that it would be impossible for anyone from my old life to connect these accounts to Vanessa Townsend. I made sure that my entire online presence was about the food and the business, not about me as a person. The business grew slowly but steadily over the next few years. I started getting regular orders from hotels, from tourists, from locals who had tried my food and wanted more. I was working 16-hour days, sometimes 18-hour days, cooking and preparing food and managing the business side of things. I would wake up at 4 in the morning to go to the market and buy fresh ingredients. I would spend the morning and afternoon cooking. I would spend the evening delivering food to the various hotels and restaurants that had standing orders with me. I would collect payment, update my records, and plan for the next day. On my days off, which weren't very frequent, I would sit on the beach and read books or just sit with my thoughts. I would walk through the streets of Castries and observe the people and the culture and the way life was lived here. I would cook new recipes and experiment with new flavor combinations. It was a simple life, much simpler than the life I had been living in Houston. There was no corporate ladder to climb, no meetings to attend, no office politics to navigate. There was just the work of my hands and the satisfaction of creating something that nourished people. But it felt authentic. It felt real. It felt like a life that I had chosen for myself, rather than a life that I was living because someone else wanted me to. About 4 years into living in St. Lucia, I had something of an awakening. I had been so focused on my business, so consumed with building something tangible and real, that I hadn't really thought about what else might be possible for me. I had been so focused on survival, on making sure I had enough money to pay rent and buy food, that I hadn't really considered my own happiness or fulfillment beyond the basic satisfaction of having created a successful business. And then one day, I was sitting on the beach at sunset, watching the sun sink below the horizon, the sky turning brilliant shades of orange and pink and purple. The water was calm, the waves gentle. There was a cool breeze coming off the ocean. And suddenly I felt this overwhelming urge to sing. I don't even remember how it started. I was just sitting there, watching the sun sink below the horizon, and suddenly I felt this overwhelming urge to sing. So I did. I sang quietly, so quietly that no one else could hear me, but I sang. I sang an old spiritual that my mother had taught me when I was a child. I sang with my eyes closed and my heart open. And as I sang, I felt something shift inside me. It was the first time I had sung since I had come to St. Lucia. It was the first time I had sung since Keith had crushed that part of me with his mockery and his judgment. It was the first time I had sung since I had decided that my voice wasn't worth sharing with the world. And in that moment, I realized something profound. I realized that my voice hadn't actually gone anywhere. It was still there, still inside me, waiting to be used. It was like a musical instrument that had been stored away in a closet for years, gathering dust but still intact, still capable of making beautiful music. I realized that I could reclaim that part of myself. I realized that no one had the right to tell me that my voice wasn't worth sharing with the world. That evening, I sat in my apartment and I cried. I cried for all the years I had wasted, all the time I had spent doubting myself, all the dreams I had sacrificed. I cried for the woman that I had been, the woman who had been so eager to please, so willing to diminish herself for the sake of someone else's happiness. I cried for all the beautiful things that I hadn't done because I was too afraid, too ashamed, too broken. But I also cried with relief. I cried because I had realized that it wasn't too late. It wasn't too late to reclaim my voice. It wasn't too late to become the person I was meant to be. From that day forward, I started to sing again. I would sing in my apartment when I was cooking. I would sing while I chopped vegetables and prepared ingredients. I would sing while I stirred pots and tended to my food. I would sing on the beach at sunset, louder now, less worried about who might hear me. I would sing quietly in my car when I was driving to make deliveries. I would sing in the shower. I was slowly, gradually reclaiming that part of myself that had been taken from me. I was slowly, gradually healing the wound that Keith had created. And as I sang, I started to notice something remarkable. I started to notice that my voice had changed. It was still soft, still delicate, still intimate in its quality, but it was more confident now. It was more sure of itself. It had a strength to it that hadn't been there before. It was as if the years of not singing, the years of keeping my voice locked away inside me, the years of swallowing my own words and my own power had somehow made it stronger when I finally let it out again. It was like the silence had given the voice time to grow roots, to deepen, to become more resonant and more real. I started taking vocal lessons from a woman named Cassandra, who taught music at a local school. Cassandra had heard me singing in my kitchen one day when she came to pick up an order of food, and she had asked me if I had ever had formal training. When I said no, she had insisted on giving me lessons. She said that I had real talent, that I had a gift, that it would be a shame if I didn't develop it. She taught me how to breathe properly, how to project my voice, how to use my diaphragm to create more power and resonance. She taught me techniques for protecting my voice and keeping it healthy. She taught me songs from different genres and different traditions. She taught me that my voice was valuable, that it was worth developing, that it was something that the world deserved to hear. At about 5 years into my time in St. Lucia, I was 38 years old. I had built a successful business, I had made friends, I had healed from much of the pain of my past. I had reclaimed my voice. I had become a new person. Tamika, the woman who lived in St. Lucia and ran a food business and sang on the beach at sunset and took vocal lessons and was slowly, gradually becoming the person I had always wanted to be. I had successfully disappeared. To anywhere looking for Vanessa Townsend, she was gone. She had vanished into thin air, erased herself completely. Vanessa Townsend no longer existed. Only Tamika remained. Only Tamika was real. And then, one day in the early morning, I received a phone call. It was my father. He was calling from Houston, and his voice sounded strange on the phone. It sounded like he had been crying. It sounded like something was very, very wrong. "Hi, Dad," I said, worried. "Is everything okay? Is Mom okay? Is something wrong with Rochelle or Yvette?" "Everyone's fine," he said. "Everyone's healthy. But honey, I need to tell you something. I had a visitor yesterday. A man came to our house, and he said he was Keith Bryant, your ex-husband. He gave me a letter addressed to you. He asked me if I would send it to you. He said it was important." My heart started pounding so hard that I thought I might pass out. Keith had shown up at my parents' house? How had he even known where they lived? Or had he always known and he was just now using that information? What did he want? Why was he showing up at my family's home after all these years? "Dad, I don't want to hear from him," I said firmly, but my voice was shaking. "Please throw the letter away. Please don't send it to me. I'm happy here. I don't need anything from him." My father was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Honey, I opened it. I hope you don't mind. I needed to know what he wanted. I needed to know if it was going to upset you. And I think you should read it." "No," I said firmly. "I don't want to read anything from him. We're done. That part of my life is behind me. I have moved on. I have built a new life here. I don't need him to be part of that." "Vanessa," my father said, and there was something in his voice that made me pause. His voice sounded different. It sounded like he knew something I didn't know. It sounded like he was trying to tell me something important. "I think you need to read this. Just trust me, okay? Just read it. For me." Against my better judgment, I agreed. I was too curious, too confused, too emotional to say no. My father read the letter to me over the phone. As he read, I felt my entire world shift. The letter said that Keith was getting married. He was getting remarried to a woman named Sabrina Coleman, the woman he had left me for, the woman he had developed feelings for while he was still married to me. The wedding was going to be held in about a month, and he was inviting me to attend. He was personally inviting me. The letter was addressed specifically to me, asking specifically for me to come. But that's not what made the world shift. What made the world shift was what he wrote next. In the letter, Keith asked me to come to his wedding specifically because he wanted me to sing. He said that he knew about my love of singing, that he had always regretted crushing that part of me, that he wanted to make it right. He said that he wanted me to sing at his wedding as a kind of blessing on the union, as a way of showing that I had forgiven him and moved on. He was asking me to use my voice, the voice that he had spent years mocking and criticizing at his wedding celebration. There was more in the letter. Keith wrote about how much he regretted what he had done, how much he regretted letting me go, how much he regretted not being the man I had needed him to be. He wrote about how he had thought about me constantly over the years, how he had wondered what happened to me, where I had gone, who I had become. He wrote that he had searched for me many times, but had never been able to find me. He wrote that he was amazed that my father had been able to help him get this letter to me, that he was grateful for that help. But there was also something else in the letter. Keith wrote that he understood if I didn't want to see him, if I didn't want to forgive him. He wrote that he wasn't asking for my forgiveness, he was just asking me to come to his wedding and sing. He said that seeing me sing, really sing, with confidence and beauty, would be the thing that would finally help him find peace about what he had done to me. He said that he wanted to be able to look back on his wedding and know that the woman he had hurt was happy, was thriving, was using her voice to bless his life even after everything he had done to hurt her. When my father finished reading the letter, I didn't say anything. I couldn't say anything. I was too overwhelmed, too confused, too emotional to say no. My father sent me the letter through email. I read it multiple times, obsessively, trying to understand what Keith was really asking for, trying to figure out if this was genuine or if this was just another manipulation, just another way of him trying to control me from a distance. Part of me wanted to ignore the letter completely. Part of me wanted to delete it and pretend I never received it. Part of me wanted to respond with anger and resentment, telling Keith exactly how much he had hurt me and how dare he ask me to come to his wedding and perform for him like I was some kind of trained monkey, like I was just a prop in his fairy tale. But there was another part of me, a part that I didn't quite understand, a part that was mysterious, even to myself, that was intrigued. There was a part of me that wanted to go to that wedding. There was a part of me that wanted him to see who I had become, who I had built myself into in the 6 years since we had divorced. There was a part of me that wanted to show him that he hadn't broken me, that he hadn't destroyed me, that the woman he had tried to crush was actually stronger than he could have imagined. I spent weeks thinking about that letter. I spent weeks going back and forth, trying to decide if I should go or if I should stay away. Every day, I would think of new reasons why I should go. I could show Keith who I had become. I could show him that I had built a successful life without him. I could sing at his wedding and show him that I had reclaimed my voice. I could let him see what he had given up when he let me go. But I think deep down, I knew what I was going to do from the moment I received that letter. I think I knew that I had to go. I had to face my past. I had to see Keith. I had to let him see me. I had to let him see what I had become. And maybe, just maybe, I had to let him see that I hadn't broken me. I had to let him see that the woman he had tried to crush was actually stronger than he could have imagined. I had to let him see that I had won. So, about a month after receiving the letter, I booked a flight from St. Lucia back to Houston. I arranged for my friends Deborah and Melvin to take over my business for the 2 weeks I would be gone. Deborah said she would handle all the deliveries to the hotels. Melvin said he would handle the bookkeeping and the money. I trusted them completely. They had become my family here in St. Lucia. I packed the suitcase carefully. I chose my clothes with intention. I wanted to look good. I wanted to look like I had built a beautiful life here, that I was thriving, that I was healthy and happy and whole. I packed the blue dress that I had bought especially for this occasion, a dress that made me feel like the best version of myself. I prepared myself mentally for seeing Keith for the first time in 8 years. I tried to imagine what it would feel like. I tried to imagine what he would look like. I tried to imagine what I would say to him. But nothing could have prepared me for what was actually going to happen. The night before my flight, I stood on the beach and I sang. I sang louder and more freely than I had ever sung before. I sang with the strength of a woman who had survived heartbreak and betrayal and loneliness and emerged stronger. I sang with the power of a woman who had learned to believe in herself. And as I sang, I felt something shift inside me. I felt like I was ready. I felt like I was ready to face my past and to show Keith exactly who I had become. I told no one what I was doing. I didn't tell my friends in St. Lucia beyond the basics that I was going to be gone for 2 weeks and that I would be back. I didn't tell my family in Houston that I was coming. I didn't tell anyone. I just quietly left the island and returned to the place I had escaped from so many years ago. When the airplane touched down in Houston, I felt like I was stepping back in time. Everything looked the same. The airport, the highway, the sprawling city. But I was different. I was completely and utterly different from the woman who had left Houston 6 years ago. The air smelled the same, but I smelled it differently. The heat was the same, but it felt different on my skin. I rented a hotel room in downtown Houston, far away from the areas where Keith and I had lived, far away from the places where our memories were buried. I sat in that hotel room for 2 days before the wedding. I didn't contact anyone. I didn't leave the hotel. I just sat there and tried to prepare myself for what was about to happen. I tried on the dress that I had brought to wear to the wedding. It was a beautiful dress, elegant and sophisticated in a deep blue color that made my skin look warm and vibrant. I had bought it specially for this occasion, had saved the receipt and packed it carefully in my suitcase. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. This woman in the mirror was confident. This woman in the mirror was beautiful. This woman in the mirror was whole. She was not broken. She was not defeated. She was not destroyed. She was radiant. She was alive. This woman in the mirror was Tamika, but this woman was also Vanessa. She was both, and she was neither. She was someone entirely new, someone who had been forged in the fires of heartbreak and betrayal and loneliness, and who had emerged stronger, more resilient, more beautiful than she had ever been before. On the morning of the wedding, I did my hair and my makeup with care and intention. I put on my blue dress and looked at myself one final time before heading to the venue. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. I had changed so much in the past 6 years. My hair was longer, shinier, healthier. My skin was glowing from all the time I had spent in the Caribbean sun. My eyes were brighter, more live, more full of hope and possibility than they had ever been before. I carried myself differently. I moved through the world with a confidence and a grace that I had never possessed before. This was not the same woman who had left Houston 6 years ago, broken and defeated and destroyed. This was what happened when you decided to save yourself. This is what happened when you chose to walk away from someone who was crushing you. This was what happened when you chose to pursue your dreams instead of sacrificing them for someone else's timeline. You became something beautiful. You became something strong. You became someone who could change the world. As I sat in the back of the taxi on the way to the wedding venue, my heart began to pound. I could feel it racing in my chest as I got closer and closer to seeing Keith for the first time in 8 years. I could feel the anxiety beginning to rise up inside me. What if he didn't recognize me? What if I froze up and couldn't sing? What if seeing him made me fall back into old patterns of thinking? What if the pain was still too fresh, too real, too overwhelming? But I pushed that anxiety down. I took a deep breath. I reminded myself that I was strong. I reminded myself that I had built a life for myself from nothing. I reminded myself that I had reclaimed my voice. I reminded myself that I had nothing to fear from Keith anymore. The taxi pulled up to the wedding venue, a beautiful outdoor garden space with white chairs set up in rows and flowers everywhere. People were streaming into the venue, dressed in their finest clothing, excited and happy for the bride and groom. I stepped out of the taxi and took a moment to survey the scene before me. I could see Keith standing at the front of the venue, looking nervous and excited. I could see a beautiful woman in a white wedding dress standing beside him, radiant and glowing. I could see family members and friends gathered together to celebrate their union. And I could feel something stirring inside me. I could feel the urge to sing building up inside me, the song that I had been waiting to sing for 8 years, beginning to rise up in my throat, ready to be released into the world. I took a deep breath, steadied myself, and began walking toward the venue. As I walked, I could feel people looking at me, wondering who I was. Where had I come from? No one seemed to recognize me. No one seemed to know that I was the woman Keith had been married to, the woman he had cast aside, the woman he had crushed with his cruelty and his broken promises. I was nobody to them. I was just another guest at a wedding. But I was about to become somebody very important to this wedding. I was about to change everything that was about to happen in this venue, and I was about to show Keith exactly what he had thrown away when he let me go. As I stepped through the entrance to the venue, my heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear anything else. My hands were shaking slightly, but I held them steady. My mind was racing, but I kept my focus sharp and clear. I could see Keith looking around the room, and I could see the exact moment when he spotted me. I could see his eyes widen. I could see his face go pale. I could see him visibly stumble, as if seeing me had physically knocked the wind out of his chest. And in that moment, everything changed. In that moment, the past and the present collided. In that moment, Keith realized exactly what he had lost when he let me go. But he had no idea yet. He had no idea what was about to happen. He had no idea that the woman he had crushed years ago had returned and that she was about to show him exactly who she had become. He had no idea that his wedding day was about to become something he would never forget. And as I stood there in the garden, waiting for the moment when I would have to sing, I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I felt like everything that had happened to me, all the pain, all the heartbreak, all the struggle, all the years of sacrifice had been preparing me for this exact moment. The ceremony was about to begin, and I was ready. I was more than ready. I was prepared for whatever was about to unfold, whatever was waiting for me on the other side of the doors that were about to open, whatever destiny had planned for me in this moment. I stood there in my blue dress, with my head held high, with my heart open, with my voice ready to be unleashed. This was my moment. This was my time to reclaim my power. This was my time to show the world who I had become. They danced their first dance together to a romantic song, something classical and sweet, perfectly chosen for the occasion. It was a slow, romantic dance. Keith held Sabrina close. She rested her head on his shoulder. They swayed together to the music. It was sweet and intimate, and the guests watched with smiles on their faces. Some of the older women had tears in their eyes, moved by the beauty of the moment. Some of the younger women looked dreamy, probably imagining their own weddings. Everyone seemed touched by what they were witnessing. Then came the toasts. Family members and friends stood up and shared stories about Keith and Sabrina. Sabrina's father talked about how proud he was of his daughter and how happy he was to welcome Keith into their family. Sabrina's best friend told a story about how Sabrina had confided in her that she was absolutely convinced Keith was the one within the first few weeks of dating him. Keith's best man told a story about how Keith had confided in him that he knew Sabrina was the one within the first week of dating her. The best man also made some jokes about Keith's dating history before Sabrina, drawing laughter from the crowd. And then Keith's father stood up. Stanley Bryant, a man in his 60s with gray hair and kind eyes, looked emotional as he raised his glass. I could see that he had been waiting for this moment, that he had thought carefully about what he wanted to say. He took a moment to collect himself, seeming to fight back tears. "I want to say a few words about my son," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Keith has been through some challenges in his life. He's made some mistakes. He's learned some hard lessons, but I'm proud of the man he's become. I'm proud of how he's grown and changed. I'm proud of how he's learned from his past and decided to be better going forward." He paused and looked directly at me, though I don't think anyone else noticed. It was just a quick glance, but I understood what it meant. He was acknowledging what had happened between Keith and me. He was acknowledging that Keith had made mistakes in his previous marriage, that he had failed in his previous marriage, that he had not been the man he should have been. It was an apology, in a way, an acknowledgement that what had happened between Keith and me was not entirely my fault, that Keith's actions had been wrong. But it was too late for apologies. It was too late for acknowledgments. I had moved on. I had built a new life. I had found real love, and I didn't need Stanley's validation or his apology. I just needed to get through this day. I just needed to sing. I just needed to show Keith who I had become. I excused myself from the reception area and went to the bathroom so that no one would see me crying. I found a private stall and sat down on the toilet seat, trying to collect myself. I let the tears flow. I let myself feel all the emotions that I had been holding back. The sadness for the life I had lost, the life I had imagined with Keith that was never going to happen. The anger at how he had treated me, at how he had mocked me, at how he had crushed my dreams. The fear that maybe this whole plan was a mistake, that maybe I shouldn't have come here, that maybe I wasn't ready for this. The hope that everything was going to work out, that my husband and daughters would show up on time, that the timing would be perfect, the anticipation of what was about to happen, the moment that would change everything. I sat in that bathroom stall for probably 15 minutes, just letting myself feel everything. And then I took a deep breath. I washed my face carefully, trying not to mess up my makeup too much. I looked at myself in the mirror. I straightened my dress. I fixed my makeup, and I reminded myself who I was. I reminded myself that I was strong. I reminded myself that I was no longer the woman who Keith had been able to hurt so easily. I reminded myself that I had a new life, a new love, a new family waiting for me back in St. Lucia. I reminded myself that I was here for a reason, and that reason was about to unfold. When I came back out to the reception area, I noticed that Keith was looking for me. He was scanning the crowd, his eyes moving from one guest to another, like he was searching for something, like he was worried about something. When his eyes landed on me, I saw him smile with relief and recognition. He looked genuinely pleased to see me. He looked like he had been worried that I might not show up, that I might have changed my mind, that it would be too painful for me to come here and see him get married. But he really grateful that I did. I know this probably wasn't easy for you, coming back here, seeing me get married, but I'm glad you're here. It means a lot to me that you made the effort to be here. Hello, Keith, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral, trying to hide the churning emotions inside me. Congratulations on your wedding. You look happy. I am happy, but I wanted to talk to you about something. I asked you to come here because I wanted you to sing. Do you remember? I mentioned it in the letter. I said that I wanted you to sing at my wedding. I wanted you to reclaim your voice in front of all these people. I wanted to help make that happen for you. I remember, I said, trying to read his expression, trying to figure out what his real intention was. You mentioned it in the letter. Great, so I'm going to have you perform during the reception. I told everyone that you were going to sing. I told them that you were a friend from out of town and that you have a beautiful voice. They're really excited to hear you. Is that okay? Can you sing for us? I hesitated for just a moment. I knew what was coming. I knew that Keith's real plan was. In that letter, he had asked me to sing, but I also knew him well enough to understand that there was something else going on. He wouldn't have gone to the trouble of finding me and inviting me to his wedding just to have me sing a nice song for his guests, unless there was something else in it for him. There had to be something else. There had to be a catch. There had to be a way for him to get what he wanted. Attention, entertainment, the satisfaction of publicly humiliating me one more time before I married someone new and left his life forever. But I had come here prepared for this. I had come here knowing that Keith hadn't changed, that he was still the same cruel, manipulative man he had always been. And I had come here with my own plan. I had come here with my husband waiting in the wings. I had come here with my daughters ready to sing. I had come here to reclaim my power. Yes, I said, looking him directly in the eye. I can sing for you. Perfect, Keith said. He looked genuinely pleased, genuinely excited. He's going to announce me in a few minutes. Just be ready. Get yourself mentally prepared. This is going to be a big moment for you. As Keith walked away, I felt my heart beginning to race. I knew that this was coming. I knew that Keith was about to try to humiliate me in front of all these people. I knew that he was about to mock me about my voice, just like he had done so many times before. I knew that he was about to remind everyone and remind me about all of my perceived failures. But I was ready for it. I was prepared. I was strong enough to handle it. I had been preparing for this moment for 6 years. I had been visualizing this moment, imagining how I would respond, imagining how my family would appear to support me. I took a few deep breaths. I said a prayer. I thought about my children waiting back in St. Lucia, waiting to hear how this went, waiting to celebrate with their mother. I thought about my husband, who was on his way to the airport at that very moment to catch a flight to Houston with our 3 daughters. I thought about everything I had accomplished. I thought about how far I had come. A few minutes later, Keith took the microphone on the stage. He clinked it a few times to get everyone's attention. The music stopped. The conversations died down. Everyone turned to look at him. The guests put down their forks and their drinks. Children were shushed. Everyone was focused on Keith, waiting to hear what he was about to say. Everyone, I want to introduce you to someone very special, he announced, his voice carrying across the reception hall with the kind of amplification that only a microphone could provide. This is Vanessa Townsend. Vanessa is an old friend of mine who has traveled a long way to be here today. Vanessa is from Houston originally, but she's been living abroad for the past several years. She's been living on some island somewhere. I think it's in the Caribbean. Anyway, she's been away for a long time. And Vanessa has a beautiful singing voice. So beautiful, in fact, that everyone just has to hear it. Vanessa, Come on up here. Come on up and share your voice with everyone." The guests applauded as I made my way to the stage. My heart was pounding, but I kept my composure. I walked carefully, making sure not to trip on the hem of my dress. I climbed the steps and took the microphone from Keith. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me. I could feel the anticipation in the room. I could feel the energy shifting as people waited to see what was going to happen. But before I could say anything, before I could acknowledge the crowd or prepare them for what I was about to sing, before I could take control of this moment, Keith spoke again. "Actually, before Vanessa sings, I want to tell everyone a little bit about her," he said, and I could hear the mocking tone beginning to creep into his voice. The same tone I had heard so many times before, the tone that had made me feel small and worthless and ashamed, the tone that had made me question my own worth, the tone that had made me doubt myself. Vanessa is a very special person. She's a woman who has dreams, just like all of us. But Vanessa's dreams are, well, they're very specific. Vanessa has always wanted to be a singer. She's always wanted to share her voice with the world. She's always wanted to be a performer, to stand on stages like this one, to be admired and celebrated for her talents. The only problem is... He paused for effect, and I could see him looking out at the crowd, enjoying the moment, enjoying having everyone's attention, enjoying being the center of the drama. He was relishing this. He was savoring this moment. The guests leaned in, curious about what he was about to say. I could see them waiting, watching, anticipating what would come next. The only problem is that Vanessa's voice is incredibly tiny, he continued, and I could hear laughter starting to ripple through the crowd. Some people laughed because they found it funny. Some people laughed because they thought they were supposed to. Some people laughed nervously because they weren't sure if this was appropriate behavior for a groom on his wedding day. When she tries to sing, it's like listening to a mouse squeak. It's almost painful, to be honest. But that's okay, because tonight we're going to hear that tiny little voice of Vanessa's, and we're all going to have a good laugh about it. Right, everyone? The guests laughed again, though this time the laughter seemed a little more uncomfortable, a little more uncertain. Some of the guests looked shocked by what Keith had said. I could see people exchanging uncomfortable glances with each other. Some of them looked ashamed, like they realized they had been laughing at something that was genuinely cruel. Some of them looked angry, like they felt that Keith had crossed the line. This was no longer lighthearted joking. This had become something else entirely. This had become genuine mockery and cruelty. I could see Sabrina's face. She looked uncomfortable. She looked like she wasn't sure whether to laugh or to be concerned about what her new husband was saying. She looked like she was starting to realize that maybe she didn't know Keith as well as she thought she did. But I didn't say anything. I didn't respond to his mockery. I didn't defend myself. I didn't cry. I didn't run off the stage. I didn't show any reaction at all. I just stood there, holding the microphone, waiting. I stood there with my head held high and my heart open and my power intact, because I knew what was about to happen. I heard a sound. It was the sound of the doors at the back of the venue opening. It was a sound that cut through Keith's words like a knife. It was a sound that changed everything in that moment. It was a sound that marked the exact point where the narrative of this day shifted from Keith's story to my story. Everyone turned to look at what was happening, and when I saw who was walking through those doors, I felt tears beginning to stream down my face. Not tears of sadness or shame, but tears of joy and vindication and triumph. Tears of the recognition that this moment was finally here. It was him. It was my husband, the man I had met in St. Lucia 6 years ago, the man I had fallen in love with, the man who had believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, the man who had supported my dreams when no one else did, who had encouraged my singing when I was too afraid to sing, who had made me feel beautiful and worthy and loved. He was walking through the doors of this wedding venue, dressed in an expensive, tailored suit that fit him perfectly. He was walking through the doors with the confidence and presence that filled the entire room. He was walking through the doors like a man who knew exactly who he was and what he was worth. And in each of his hands, he was holding the hands of two beautiful little girls. My triplet daughters, my beautiful, precious, perfect triplet daughters. They were 5 years old now, and they were absolutely radiant. They were wearing matching pink dresses that sparkled in the light of the reception hall. The dresses had been custom made for this occasion. The pink was a beautiful shade that complemented their brown skin perfectly. Each one of them was holding a pink microphone. The microphones looked like toy microphones, but they were actually functional, connected to the sound system so that their voices would be amplified when they sang. And as they walked toward the stage, as they drew closer to this moment that we had all been preparing for, they began to sing. They began to sing the victory anthem, the song that we sang together every Sunday after church, the song that represented everything we had built together, everything we had overcome, everything we had achieved as a family. The song that I had written with my husband about redemption and resilience and triumph over adversity. The song about breaking free from the chains of the past and stepping into the power of the future. The crowd gasped. Everyone was looking at this man and these three beautiful little girls walking toward the stage. Their eyes were wide. Their mouths were slightly open. No one knew who these people were. No one understood what was happening. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. The children's voices were pure and beautiful. They had been taking vocal lessons with their father, who was an accomplished musician. They had been preparing for this moment for weeks. They knew the song by heart. They sang with emotion and power and confidence. Their young voices carried through the reception hall with a clarity and beauty that seemed almost otherworldly. I could see recognition beginning to dawn on some people's faces. I could see people starting to understand that this wasn't just some random man and some random children, that this was connected to me somehow, that this was the moment when everything was going to change. My husband was a strikingly handsome man with warm brown eyes and a beautiful smile. He had deep brown skin that glowed in the light. He had strong, defined features. He was dressed in an expensive suit that was tailored perfectly to his body. His presence filled the room with confidence and love and power. He carried himself like a man who knew who he was, who knew what he wanted, who knew that he deserved the best that life had to offer. My three daughters were identical quintuplets. No, wait, triplets, with beautiful brown eyes and big smiles that lit up their faces. They had my mouth, my nose, my cheekbones, but they had their father's strength, his confidence, his warmth. They looked like they belonged in this moment. They looked like they were meant to be here. They looked powerful and beautiful and brave. My husband reached the stage and climbed up onto it in one fluid motion. My three daughters followed him, still singing, their young voices blending together in perfect harmony. The harmony was absolutely perfect. Every note was on pitch. Every word was clearly enunciated. Every emotion was conveyed with stunning clarity. And then my husband came over to me, and he put his arm around my waist, and he looked into my eyes with a love so profound, so deep, so unconditional, that I felt my knees nearly buckle beneath me. "I love you," he whispered, so only I could hear. "I believe in your voice. I believe in you. I believe in everything you are. I believe in your power and your strength and your beauty." And with those words, something inside me shifted. I felt the shame and the embarrassment and the anger being replaced by something else. I felt strength flowing through me. I felt power coursing through my veins. I felt love filling my heart. I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I felt like this was my moment. I felt like this was my time. I felt like I was standing on the precipice of a transformation that was about to change the entire world. I looked at my 3 daughters, still singing, their voices pure and beautiful and full of joy and hope. I looked at my husband standing beside me, supporting me, believing in me with every fiber of his being. And I looked out at the crowd, at all these people who had just watched Keith mock me, who were now watching the scene unfold before them with shock and amazement and dawning comprehension on their faces. Keith's expression had changed completely. He had gone pale. He looked shocked. He looked devastated. He looked like he had just realized exactly what he had lost when he let me go. He looked like a man whose carefully constructed world was crumbling around him. He looked like a man who was beginning to understand the magnitude of his mistake. Sabrina looked confused and upset. She was looking at my husband, then at my children, then at me, trying to figure out what was happening, trying to understand who these people were, trying to piece together what this moment meant. The other guests were silent now. The entire reception hall was silent, except for the sound of my daughters singing their hearts out. The music and the voices seemed to be the only thing that existed in that moment. Everything else faded away. Time seemed to stop. And I began to sing. I sang with all the power and beauty and passion that I had spent years developing in St. Lucia. I sang with the strength of a woman who had survived heartbreak and betrayal and loneliness and had emerged stronger than she had ever been before. I sang with the confidence of a woman who knew her worth, who knew the value of her voice, who knew that she had something beautiful to share with the world. I sang, and my voice was not small. My voice was not tiny. My voice was not insignificant. My voice was powerful and beautiful and full of emotion and strength. My voice filled the entire reception hall. My voice carried out into the garden surrounding the venue. My voice seemed to fill the entire city of Houston. My voice moved people to tears. My daughters continued to sing with me, their young voices blending with my voice in a way that was absolutely magical. The harmony was perfect beyond perfection. The emotion was incredible beyond belief. The power was undeniable and overwhelming. It was like listening to angels sing. It was like listening to heaven itself, opening up and revealing its secrets to the world below. The crowd was silent now, completely transfixed by what they were witnessing. Some of them had tears streaming down their faces. Some of them were smiling. Some of them were looking at me with a newfound respect, a newfound understanding of who I truly was. Some of them were beginning to understand that they had been fooled by Keith's mockery. They were beginning to understand that what they had been laughing at moments before was actually something beautiful and powerful and meaningful. My husband stood beside me, and as I sang, he began to move. He reached into his jacket pocket with his free hand, his other hand was still around my waist, and pulled out a small box. The box was white velvet, clearly expensive, clearly special. He opened it slowly and deliberately, letting the moment build. Inside was the most beautiful diamond ring I had ever seen. It was enormous, brilliant cut, glittering under the lights of the reception hall like a captured star. It was clearly extremely expensive. It was clearly chosen with care and love and intention. It wasn't just a ring. It was a statement. It was a promise. It was a symbol of the kind of love I deserved to receive. It was a symbol of the man I had chosen to build my life with. As I continued to sing, my husband got down on one knee. He knelt in front of me on the stage of this wedding reception, in front of hundreds of people, in front of the man who had hurt me so deeply, in front of the world. "Vanessa," he said, and his voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. His voice was strong and clear and full of emotion. His voice carried across the entire reception hall. "Will you renew our vows with me? Will you marry me all over again? Will you stand before all these people and promise to love me and support me and believe in me just as I promise to love you and support you and believe in you for the rest of our lives? Will you marry me again? Will you give me the honor of being your husband again? Will you let me spend the rest of my days showing you how much you mean to me?" I was still singing as he asked me this question, but I managed to nod through my tears. I looked down at him kneeling on the stage, holding that beautiful ring, and I felt like my heart was going to burst with joy. I felt like all the pain I had endured, all the heartbreak I had suffered, all the struggles I had gone through had been leading to this exact moment. I felt like my entire life had been preparing me for this. He slipped the ring onto my finger, and it felt like the most perfect moment of my entire life. It felt like all the pieces of my story were coming together. It felt like the universe was finally acknowledging my worth. It felt like I was finally being seen, finally being celebrated, finally being loved the way I deserve to be loved. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers that seemed to go on forever. Everyone was standing up, clapping their hands together loudly, crying, celebrating this moment with me and with my family. Some people were jumping up and down. Some people were embracing each other. Some people were shaking their heads in amazement. Everyone was caught up in the emotion of what was happening. I could see people on their phones recording this moment, knowing that it was something special, knowing that it was something worth capturing and preserving. Even Keith was standing there, clapping, though he looked shell-shocked. Even Sabrina was clapping, though she looked confused and upset and trying to process what was happening. My daughters finished their song, and then my husband, still on one knee, picked up one of them and held her in his arms. Then he stood up and picked up another daughter. The three of them were clapping and laughing and celebrating. They had no idea that this moment would change everything. They had no idea that their performance, their presence, their voices would become part of a story that would spread around the world. When the applause finally began to die down, I was asked to speak. Someone brought me a microphone, and I took a deep breath. I looked out at the crowd. I looked at Keith standing there with his mouth hanging open. I looked at Sabrina, who now looked like she understood that something very significant was happening. I looked at my husband and my daughters, and I began to speak. "Thank you all for being here," I began, my voice steady and strong. "I know that this has been quite a shock to everyone. I know that what you're witnessing right now is unexpected and surprising and probably confusing, but I wanted to take a moment to tell you my story, to tell you what I've been through and where I am now, to tell you who I am and who I've become, to tell you the truth." I paused and looked directly at Keith. 8 years ago, I was a different woman. I was a woman who had been broken by love. I was a woman who had sacrificed everything for a man who didn't appreciate me, who mocked me, who crushed the dreams I had for myself. I was a woman who had given up on her own voice, both literally and figuratively. I was a woman who had believed everything I was told about myself by someone I loved more than I loved myself. I was a woman who had lost herself completely in the pursuit of building a life with someone else. I took another breath. 8 years ago, I was married to Keith Bryant, and for 5 years of that marriage, I gave him everything. I gave him my savings, I gave him my youth, I gave him my support and my belief and my love. I gave him my dreams. I put my goals on hold. I sacrificed my career. I gave up on my aspirations. And in return, he gave me mockery. He gave me cruelty. He gave me disappointment. He gave me betrayal. He gave me lies and broken promises and shattered dreams. I could see people in the crowd nodding, understanding, beginning to grasp what had happened to me. He mocked me about my voice. He told me that my voice was too small, too insignificant, not worth sharing with the world. He told me that I should give up on my dreams of singing and focus on other things. He spent years convincing me that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't worthy, that I didn't deserve to have my voice heard. He used my deepest insecurity against me. He weaponized my vulnerability. He took the things I was most ashamed of and he made them into tools of mockery. I could see tears forming in people's eyes. He also mocked me about wanting to have children, I continued. He promised me that we would start a family together. He promised me that once we were financially stable, once we had saved enough money, once we had built that strong foundation, we would have children. But then, when we finally reached that point of financial stability, when we finally had enough money, when we finally had built that strong foundation, he changed his mind. He decided that he didn't want to be a father. He decided that he didn't want to have children with me. And when I tried to talk to him about it, when I tried to express how much I wanted to be a mother, he didn't listen. He didn't try to understand. He just left me. He divorced me. He threw away 5 years of marriage because he wasn't willing to give me what I wanted. He wasn't willing to be the man I needed him to be. He wasn't willing to support my dreams. I looked out at the crowd and I could see people beginning to understand the depth of Keith's betrayal. I could see people beginning to see him differently. When Keith left me, I felt like my life was over. I felt like I would never be happy again. I felt like I would never achieve my dreams. I felt like I had wasted the best years of my life on a man who didn't love me, who didn't respect me, who didn't believe in me. I was 31 years old, and I felt like my life was already finished. I felt like I had failed at the most important thing a woman could do, building a loving partnership with someone else. I felt like I was never going to be a mother. I felt like I was never going to have the family I had always dreamed of. I felt like I was broken and damaged and unworthy of love. I took a moment to compose myself. So I did something crazy, I continued. I left Houston. I left everything I knew. I left my family, my friends, my career. I left my entire life behind and moved to a small island in the Caribbean called St. Lucia. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew that I couldn't stay in Houston anymore. I couldn't be reminded every day of the life I had lost. I couldn't be surrounded by memories of the man who had hurt me so deeply. I couldn't wake up every morning in a place that represented my failure and my pain and my broken dreams. I could see people nodding, understanding, resonating with my story. When I got to St. Lucia, I was broken. I was defeated. I was lost. But I was also free. I was free from Keith's mockery. I was free from his cruelty. I was free from his judgment. I was free from his lies and his broken promises and shattered dreams. And in that freedom, I began to heal. I began to rebuild. I began to become whole again. I smiled as I thought about my time in St. Lucia. I started a small food business. I began to cook and create and build something that was entirely my own. I made friends. I built a community. I started to believe in myself again. And most importantly, I reclaimed my voice. I started singing again. I started to remember that my voice had value, that my voice mattered, that my voice was worth sharing with the world. For the first time in years, I began to sing without shame. I began to sing without fear. I began to sing because singing made me feel alive. I paused and looked at my husband and daughters. And then about a year after I arrived in St. Lucia, I met this incredible man. He's not just a singer and an artist. He's one of the most successful musicians in the Caribbean. He's released multiple albums. He's won awards and accolades and recognition for his artistry. He's built a career doing what he loves. He's achieved his dreams. And tonight, we're releasing our first album together, an album that we've been working on for months, an album that combines his musical talent with my voice, an album called Victory. The crowd gasped. They were beginning to understand the magnitude of what was happening. This album is a celebration of everything we've overcome, I said. It's a celebration of love and redemption and second chances. It's a celebration of the power of believing in yourself, even when no one else believes in you. It's a celebration of the power of having someone in your life who loves you unconditionally and supports you completely. This album is our story. It's our journey from heartbreak to triumph. It's our proof that no matter how broken you feel, no matter how defeated you seem, you can come back, you can rebuild, you can achieve your dreams. I took a deep breath and looked directly at Keith. And I want to say something directly to Keith, because I know he's listening. I know he's hearing every word I'm saying, and I want him to understand what I'm about to tell him. I paused for effect, letting the moment build. I want to thank you, I said. I want to thank you for breaking my heart. I want to thank you for leaving me. I want to thank you for mocking my voice and my dreams. I want to thank you for not believing in me. I want to thank you for failing me as a husband and as a partner. I want to thank you for failing to be the man I needed you to be. I want to thank you for disappointing me and betraying me and breaking every promise you ever made to me. Because if you hadn't done those things, my life would be completely different. If you hadn't hurt me, I wouldn't have left Houston. If I hadn't left Houston, I wouldn't have found St. Lucia. If I hadn't found St. Lucia, I wouldn't have met my husband. If I hadn't met my husband, I wouldn't have had my beautiful daughters. If I hadn't had my daughters, I wouldn't have learned what true love really means. If I hadn't learned what true love means, I wouldn't be the strong, confident, beautiful woman that I am today. If you hadn't broken me, I wouldn't have had to rebuild myself. And in rebuilding myself, I became something more beautiful, more powerful, more wonderful than I ever could have been if I had stayed with you. I could see tears streaming down Keith's face now. I could see the realization in his eyes. I could see him understanding, finally, what his actions had cost him. I could see him understanding that by leaving me, by breaking my heart, by crushing my dreams, he had actually given me the greatest gift of my life. You didn't break me, Keith, I continued. You actually saved me. By leaving me, by pushing me away, by crushing my dreams, you forced me to find myself. You forced me to become the woman I was meant to be. You forced me to reclaim my voice. You forced me to believe in myself. And for that, I am eternally grateful. Thank you for the pain, because the pain led me to my strength. Thank you for the heartbreak, because the heartbreak led me to real love. Thank you for my struggles, because my struggles led me to my triumph. I looked at Sabrina now. I also want to say something to Sabrina, I said, my voice gentler now. I know that this is confusing and painful and difficult. I know that you probably feel hurt and betrayed right now. I know that you're trying to process what you're hearing and what you're seeing. But I want you to know that I harbor no ill will towards you. I want you to know that I hope you can build a beautiful life with Keith. I want you to know that I hope he is the man for you that he wasn't able to be for me. I want you to know that he supports your dreams and believes in you and lifts you up. And I want you to know that if he ever mocks you or crushes your dreams or makes you feel small, I want you to remember my story. I want you to remember that you deserve so much better. I want you to remember that you are worthy of real love and real support and real belief. I turned to address everyone in the crowd. To everyone here, I want to say this. Believe in yourself. Believe in your voice. Believe in your dreams. Don't let anyone tell you that you're not good enough. Don't let anyone convince you that your voice doesn't matter. Don't let anyone mock you or belittle you. And if you ever find yourself in a situation where you're being treated this way, where you're being criticized and mocked and made to feel small, I want you to remember my story. I want you to remember that you have the power to leave. You have the power to start over. You have the power to become who you were meant to be. You have the power to reclaim your voice. You have the power to triumph over adversity. I took a deep breath. I forgive Keith, I said, and I meant it. I forgive him for everything he did to hurt me. I forgive him for breaking my heart. I forgive him for wasting my time. I forgive him for mocking my voice. I forgive him, and I hope that he can find peace with the choices he's made. I hope that he can learn from his mistakes. I hope that he can become the man that everyone deserves him to be. I hope that he can be a good husband to Sabrina. I hope that he can support her dreams and believe in her and lift her up. But more than anything, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for my pain because it led me to my strength. I'm grateful for my heartbreak because the heartbreak led me to real love. I'm grateful for my struggles because my struggles led me to my triumph. I'm grateful for this moment, for all of you, for witnessing my story and allowing me to share it with the world. I'm grateful to Keith for leaving me because leaving me was the best thing he could have done for me. I'm grateful for my new life. I'm grateful for my husband. I'm grateful for my daughters. I'm grateful for my voice. I'm grateful for my triumph. I raised the microphone slightly. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing in me. And thank you for allowing me to reclaim my voice. I handed the microphone back to one of the reception staff, and the crowd erupted into applause and cheers that seemed to go on forever. I could hear people crying. I could hear people applauding. I could see people standing up. I could see people embracing each other. I could see people moved by my words, inspired by my story, touched by what they had just witnessed. But more than anything, I could see the truth on people's faces. I could see them understanding, finally, what had really happened. I could see them understanding that Keith had been cruel. I could see them understanding that I had been right to leave him. I could see them believing in me, supporting me, celebrating my triumph. My husband came over to me and pulled me into his arms. He kissed me passionately, and the crowd cheered. My daughters ran over to us and we all held each other on the stage of this wedding reception, celebrating this moment, celebrating our love, celebrating our victory. In the days that followed, our album Victory was released on all the major streaming platforms: Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Bandcamp, every music streaming service that existed. It was released everywhere at the same moment, a coordinated global release that made a statement about the power of our message, and it went viral almost immediately. The title track, which was the song that I had sung at Keith's wedding with my daughters, became a sensation beyond anything we could have imagined. It was played on radio stations all over the world. It was shared on social media millions of times within the first week. It was covered by other artists. It was sampled in hip-hop songs. It became an anthem for people who had overcome hardship, who had survived betrayal, who had reclaimed their power. The video of what had happened at Keith's wedding was uploaded to YouTube, and it immediately went viral in a way that was unprecedented. Within the first hour, it had millions of views. Within the first day, it had hundreds of millions of views. Within the first week, it had billions of views. People watched it over and over again. People cried watching it. People felt inspired watching it. People felt empowered watching it. People shared it with their friends and their families. The video accumulated billions and billions of views. Within a month of the album's release, we had sold over 1 million copies. Within 2 months, we had sold 5 million copies. Within 3 months, we were one of the top-selling artists in the world. Our album won multiple awards. We were nominated for Grammy Awards. We were shortlisted for the Pulitzer Prize for Music. We were invited to perform at major music festivals and award shows. We were invited to perform on international television shows like Saturday Night Live and The Late Late Show and The Tonight Show. We were featured in major magazines like Rolling Stone and Vogue and People magazine. We were interviewed on podcasts and radio shows and television programs. Our story was told and retold all over the world. Our names were known everywhere. Our faces were recognized on the street. But more than the commercial success, more than the awards and the accolades and the fame, what moved me most was the impact our story was having on people's lives. I received letters from women all over the world who said that my story had inspired them to leave abusive relationships. I received messages from people who said that my song had helped them get through their darkest moments. I received emails from people who said that hearing my voice had helped them believe in themselves again. I received messages from men who said that my story had helped them understand the harm they had been causing in their own relationships and had inspired them to change. I received messages from people who said that my story had saved their lives. And I realized that my journey, my pain, my heartbreak, all of it had a purpose. It had led me to this point. It had led me to be able to help other people. It had led me to be able to use my voice to make a difference in the world. It had led me to be able to share my story and inspire others to believe in themselves. My husband and I decided to use our platform to start a foundation. We called it the Victory Foundation, and its purpose was to help women who had been in toxic relationships to rebuild their lives. We provided counseling services to help women process their trauma and begin to heal. We provided job training to help women build new skills and find employment. We provided business support to help women start their own businesses and become financially independent. We provided mentorship to women who were trying to navigate their lives after leaving toxic relationships. We helped them believe in themselves. We helped them reclaim their voices. We helped them become the women they were meant to be. Within the first year, the Victory Foundation had helped over 1,000 women. Within 2 years, we had helped over 5,000 women. Within 3 years, we had helped over 10,000 women. We opened branches in multiple countries. We expanded our services. We partnered with other organizations. We became a force for change in the world. And my food business expanded in ways I never could have imagined. I opened restaurants in several Caribbean islands. I started a line of packaged foods that were sold in stores all over the world. I published a cookbook that became a bestseller. The cookbook contained recipes from St. Lucia, but also recipes that reflected my journey. Each recipe had a story attached to it. Each recipe represented a moment in my life. Each recipe was a celebration of how food had saved me and healed me and brought me back to life. I was invited to be a chef on cooking shows like Top Chef and Master Chef. I appeared on major television networks. I was offered deals to write a memoir, to do a documentary, to create a television series about my life. I was offered endorsement deals and sponsorship opportunities. I was offered more money than I could have ever imagined. But I was careful about what I said yes to and what I said no to. I wanted to make sure that any project I took on was authentic, was true to my story, was going to help people. I turned down deals that I felt were exploitative. I turned down opportunities that I felt would compromise my values. I focused on the projects that would allow me to continue sharing my story, continue helping women, continue making a difference in the world. 6 months after the album's release, my beautiful twin boys were born. They were perfect and healthy and beautiful, and they completed our family. We had 5 children now, all of whom were loved and supported and believed in. We had built a family based on love, respect, and support for each other's dreams. Every Sunday after church, we would all gather together, and we would sing our victory anthem. My husband would sing his part. I would sing mine. My 3 daughters would sing their parts. My twin boys would listen from their carriers, even though they were too young to sing along. And in that moment, surrounded by my family, surrounded by the people I loved most in the world, I would think back to where I had been, to who I had been, to the pain I had endured. And I would be grateful for the journey, grateful for the pain because it had made me stronger, grateful for the heartbreak because it had led me to real love, grateful for the betrayal because it had led me to self-discovery, grateful for everything that had happened to me because it had all led me to this moment, this life, this beautiful, perfect, amazing life that I had built for myself and my family. I went home to Houston to visit my family about a year after the wedding. I saw my parents, my sisters, my old friends. Everyone wanted to hear about my life in St. Lucia, about my husband, about my children, about my music career, about the album, about the foundation. Everyone wanted to know how I had done it, how I had managed to go from being a broken, defeated woman to being this successful, confident, beautiful woman. And I told them the truth. I told them that it wasn't easy, it wasn't quick. It took years of hard work, of belief in myself, of refusing to give up even when things were hard. It took finding people who believed in me. It took finding a man who loved me for who I was and not for who he wanted me to be. It took reclaiming my voice, both literally and figuratively. It took becoming brave enough to share my story, brave enough to be vulnerable, brave enough to let people see my pain. But I also told them that it was possible. I told them that no matter where you are in your life, no matter how broken you feel, no matter how defeated you seem, you can come back. You can rebuild. You can become the person you were meant to be. All it takes is belief in yourself and the willingness to do the work. One day, about a year and a half after the wedding, I received a letter from Keith. He had written to me, and in the letter, he told me that he had been inspired by my story. He told me that watching my transformation had made him want to become a better man. He told me that he was going to therapy, that he was working on his own issues, that he was trying to be a better husband to Sabrina. He told me that he was proud of me, that he admired me, that he was grateful for the forgiveness I had extended to him. He apologized again for everything he had done to hurt me. He said that he understood now, in a way he never had before, how much damage he had caused. He said that he was working hard to make sure he never treated anyone the way he had treated me. He said that my story had changed him. And I was moved by his letter. I didn't respond to it because I felt like that chapter of my life was truly closed now. But I was glad to know that my story, my journey, my transformation had a positive impact on him. I was glad to know that maybe, just maybe, he had learned something from our experience together. I was glad to know that maybe he was going to be a better man going forward. But the most important thing was that I had learned. I had learned who I was. I had learned what I was capable of. I had learned that I was strong. I had learned that my voice mattered. I had learned that I deserved to be loved, truly loved, unconditionally loved. And I had learned that sometimes the worst things that happen to us can become the best things if we're willing to do the work, if we're willing to believe in ourselves, if we're willing to never give up. As I stood in my home in St. Lucia, surrounded by my beautiful family, listening to my children laugh and play, I thought about the woman I had been 8 years ago. I thought about her pain, her fear, her despair, and I wanted to tell her something. I wanted to tell her that it was going to be okay. I wanted to tell her that the pain she was feeling would eventually fade. I wanted to tell her that she was stronger than she knew. I wanted to tell her that her voice mattered, that her dreams were worth pursuing, that she was worth loving. And I wanted to tell her that the best was yet to come. I wanted to tell her that in 8 years, she would be standing in a beautiful home on a Caribbean island with a husband who loved her more than anything in the world. I wanted to tell her that she would have 5 beautiful children. I wanted to tell her that her music would touch the lives of millions of people. I wanted to tell her that she would build a successful business, that she would become an author, that she would use her platform to help other women rebuild their lives. I wanted to tell her that she would be happy, truly, genuinely, deeply happy. And I wanted to tell her that it would all be worth it. All the pain, all the heartbreak, all the struggle, all the years of feeling broken and defeated and lost. It would all be worth it because it would lead her to this moment, to this life, to this beautiful, perfect, amazing life that she never could have imagined. My journey from Vanessa, a broken woman who had lost herself to a toxic relationship, to the woman I was now, a confident, successful, beautiful woman who had reclaimed her voice and her power, was a journey of transformation and redemption. And I knew that my story could inspire others to embark on their own journeys. The world had seen my triumph at Keith's wedding. The world had heard my voice. The world had listened to my story. And the world had been changed by it. People all over the world were inspired to believe in themselves. People were inspired to leave toxic relationships. People were inspired to reclaim their voices. People were inspired to pursue their dreams. And that was the greatest victory of all. Now, as I stand here, I want to ask you a question. If you were in my situation, if your ex invited you to their wedding and asked you to sing, knowing that they were going to mock you and humiliate you, what would you have done? Would you have shown up? Would you have sung? Would you have walked away and refused to participate in your own humiliation? I made the choice to go. I made the choice to show up. I made the choice to sing. And that choice changed my life. That choice changed the lives of millions of people. That choice inspired countless women to believe in themselves and leave toxic relationships. So I want to encourage you to make the choices that are going to lead you to your triumph. I want to encourage you to believe in yourself, even when no one else believes in you. I want to encourage you to reclaim your voice, both literally and figuratively. I want to encourage you to pursue your dreams, no matter what obstacles stand in your way. And I want to encourage you to subscribe to Presify Stories. Turn on your notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. Like this video. Share this video with people you love. Comment and let us know what you would have done in my situation. Let us know your own stories of triumph and redemption. Join our community of people who are reclaiming their voices and their power. Because your story matters. Your voice matters. You matter. And the world needs to hear from you. We'll see you in the next video. Bye!